that, and the other, and this day in history. Uh, this day in history, July the 4th, 1776, the Continental Congress adopts the Declaration of Independence, which proclaims the independence of the United States of America from Great Britain and its king. The Declaration came 442 days after the first volleys of the American Revolution were fired at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts, and marked the ideological expansion of the conflict that would eventually encourage France's intervention on behalf of the Patriots. The first major American opposition to British policy came in 1765 after Parliament passed the Stamp Act, a taxation measure to raise revenues for the standing British Army in America. Under the banner of no taxation without representation, colonists convened the Stamp Act Congress in October 1775. In October 1765 to vocalize their opposition to the tax. With its enactment in November, most colonists called for a boycott of British goods, and some organized a tax on the custom houses and homes of tax collectors. After months of protests in the colonies, Parliament voted to repeal the Stamp Act in March of 1766. Why did the American colonists declare their independence? Most colonists continued to quietly accept British rule until Parliament's enactment of the Tea Act in 1773, a bill designed to save the faltering East India Company from greatly lowering its tea tax and granting it a monopoly on the American tea trade. The low tax allowed the East India Company to undercut even tea smuggled into America by Dutch traders, and many colonists viewed the act as another example of taxation tyranny. In response, militant patriots in Massachusetts organized the Boston Tea Party, which saw British tea values at some 18,000 pounds dumped into the Boston harbor. The British Parliament, outraged by the Boston Tea Party and other blatant acts of destruction of British property, enacted the Coercive Act, also known as the Intolerable Acts, in 1774. The Coercive Acts closed Boston to merchant shipping, established formal British military rule in Massachusetts, made British officials immune to criminal prosecution in America, and required colonists to quarter British troops. The colonists subsequently called the First Continental Congress to consider a united American resistance to the British. With the other colonies watching intently, Massachusetts led the resistance to the British, forming a shadow revolutionary government and establishing militias to resist the increasing British military presence across the colony. In April of 1775, Thomas Gage, the British governor of Massachusetts, ordered British troops to march to Concord, Massachusetts, where a Patriot arsenal was known to be located. On April 19, 1775, the British regulars encountered a group of American militiamen at Lexington, and the first shots of the American Revolution were fired. Initially, both the American and the British saw the conflict as a kind of civil war within the British Empire. To King George III, it was a colonial rebellion, and to the Americans, it was a struggle for their rights as British citizens. However, Parliament remained unwilling to negotiate with the American rebels and instead purchased German mercenaries to help the British Army crush the rebellion. In response to Britain's continued opposition to reform, the Continental Congress began to pass measures abolishing British authority in the colonies. In January 1776, Thomas Paine published Common Sense, an influential political pamphlet that convincingly argued for American independence and sold more than 500,000 copies in a few months. In the spring of 1776, support for independence swept the colonies. The Continental Congress called for the states to form their own government, and a 5-man committee was assigned to draft a declaration. The Declaration of Independence was largely the work of Virginian Thomas Jefferson. In justifying American independence, Jefferson drew generously from the political philosophy of John Locke, an advocate of natural rights, and from the work of other English theorists. The first section features the famous lines, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, and all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The second part presents a long list of grievances that provided the rationale for rebellion. July 2nd, 1776, the Continental Congress voted to approve a Virginia motion calling for separation from Britain. The dramatic words of this resolution were added to the closing of the Declaration of Independence. 2 days later, on July the 4th, the Declaration was formally adopted by 12 colonies. After minor revision, New York approved it on July 19th. On August 2nd, the Declaration was signed. The Revolutionary War would last for 5 more years, yet to come were the Patriot triumphs at Saratoga, the bitter winter at Valley Forge, the intervention of the French, and the final victory at Yorktown in 1781. In 1783, with the signing of the Treaty of Paris with Britain, the United States formally became a free and independent nation. So, others in this day in history, LGBTQ activists hold the first annual reminder demonstration in Philadelphia in 1965. In 1884, France gives the Statue of Liberty to the United States. In 1997, Pathfinder lands on Mars. In 1826, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams die. In 1855, the first edition of Walt Whitman's Leave on Grass is published. In 1911, a heat wave strikes the Northeast, killing hundreds. In 1954, a sensationalized murder trial inspires The Fugitive. And in 1863, Confederate surrender at Vicksburg. That has been this day in history. Remember, always forward, never back. I hope you all have a good 4th of July. Happy Independence Day. Stay safe. Thank you much. Until next time, see you later.